From the post-millennial, socialist Katie Wilson wins election for Seattle mayor, defeating Democratic incumbent Bruce Harrell after a late vote count. Hilson describes herself as a socialist, and her win is a rejection of the moderate leadership that the city once saw. Socialist Katie Wilson has defeated Democratic incumbent Bruce Harrell to become Seattle's next mayor. The election, which occurred on November 4th, saw Harrell in the lead by 7 points, but Wilson redistributed his vote. Now, Wilson gained ground over a week later as mail-in ballots continued. So we got, okay, so maybe she did redistribute. No, I don't know. That's a joke, YouTube. We're just joshing around here, just a bunch of fellas making jokes. The latest ballot count on November 12th showed Wilson leading by nearly 2,000 votes, enough for the race to be called for the Socialist barista, with 50.08% to Harrell's 49.59%. So what do you guys think of this? You big fans?
This just speaks to the argument that we've been making. Like, if you don't have an economy that works for people, specifically for young people, then they're not going to think, oh, I can buy into a capitalist society.
Yeah.
The reason this is the second, major city that in this particular election season that has elected a socialist who said, at least has said, I am going to institute policies that are supposed to help you, right? Like, and it's not like they defeated a Republican. Both of them defeated Democrats. Cuomo, even though he was running as an independent, he was a Democrat, and he'd been a Democrat, I believe, all of his life. And the socialist defeated the Democrat in Seattle. These elections bode very, very badly for the United States. Young people do not buy into our system, and we need to fix that. We need to do something. The federal government needs to do something to make sure that young people feel like they can actually engage in our system and will come out better for it.
Yeah.
This is like a pendulum swing from corporatocracy, where I don't know how much richer Amazon, Google got during the pandemic, how much richer Alphabet, these what is it, NVIDIA, and BlackRock buying housing. Now these mega, global megacorps own houses that should probably be owned by American citizens. So the people are like, just give me some socialism to fix this. I mean, if you can't stop corporations, what do? You have to band together as a society, and that's kind of communistic, so.
Well, the problem is, so for somebody like me, I get grossed out when people talk about wealth redistribution. I hate the idea that you think you should have any say over what somebody else does with their money, and even worse, the idea that you can take money from them and imagine yourself the good guy. But for a lot of these people, they don't see a way out. And I understand, I'm in a lot of ways, I'm in the same boat. It's not like I live in a world now where the idea of owning a house is almost ridiculous. And you're like, look, I don't believe in it because at my core value, I don't believe in taking from somebody else and then imagining that I'm the good guy. But for a lot of these people, they don't see any other path forward. And you're going to get more elections like this in the future because they don't see a world where capitalism actually works.
Well, I guess I have devil's advocate question here. What does a socialist mean in Seattle? I mean, the city that
so
had
she's the moderate.
Yeah, what Mondami was like, so we knew with him, it was he's going to have the government grocery stores. I think people understand, that seems like a pretty dumb idea, but like Seattle, I've visited in the last 5 years, it seemed to me pretty socialist already. So I'm actually curious what that means.
Yeah, it just means they're going to accelerate the collapse.
Sure.
And also,
I wonder the same thing.
When I say capitalism, I'm not even necessarily referencing that specifically, because we just had a whole discussion about how government and big business get together and do things like H-1B visas, right? That's not capitalism. That's cronyism at best, but they don't understand that. They don't understand that there's a difference between those ideals. All they see is a media where a bunch of millionaires have othered the idea of the billionaire and turned them into a class of person that's worthy of disdain because that's the haves and the have-nots, and they're going to keep fighting about it.
I tell you, man, the idea that property is something that is attainable has to be an idea that's tangible and real to you.
Yes.
And that's that's the point, right? Young people nowadays don't ever expect to own their own home. If you live in a city, you don't own a car. You probably have some kind of rely on public transit or whatever. So the idea of property has to be something that young people can actually
and yes, ownership. I mean, because if you're financing a burrito, it means that you legit you must not really think money's real at that.
Yeah.
Like this must all be like a game.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, you have no investment in like accumulation in like, you know, like long term. Like at that point, I mean, you're dealing with, you know, I think a really sad state of affairs that like we morally, like if we have the power to do it, we have got to change course, even if it's painful.
Phil, when you're talking about property ownership and how important that is to give young people hope to own property, I agree. But the problem I'm seeing is if BlackRock owns 10 million houses, like I'm kind of open to the idea of seizing the property from BlackRock and giving it back to the American people.
I'm not. And the reason I'm not is because if you seize property, you destroy investment. Okay.
But the problem,
if you're going to seize property from either companies or from people, then people that have capital are not going to invest their capital. And this is what happens in socialist societies. When you nationalize things, when the government takes property from private ownership, then people that have capital are like, I'm not going to invest my money because the government will take it. So that was the argument that was made in New York. Kevin Leary made the argument. Why am I going to try to build something when I know that the government is likely to just take it?
I guess it's just a difference between, I wouldn't advocate taking it from a person or a small business or something, but these corporatocracy is like, it's a new function that is like, how do you prevent, because if BlackRock owned every house in the United States,
what I would say about
BlackRock,
I know a thing or two about the company. I bet, you know, my job, I've been going after them for years. There are multiple federal court cases at this point that have labeled BlackRock a monopoly. So I think that there is a strong case to be made to break BlackRock up. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, those three have an absurd percentage of all of the investment, like pension fund and other investment, money in this country. We do have antitrust laws on the books. Yeah. Those are long-standing, and if we feel that they have exceeded, the scale and they are a monopolistic actor, that there are laws on the books to deal with that. So that's one way that you can do it legally within the current framework of law.
Can an American antitrust suit be brought against a global corporation with headquarters in Mumbai or something?
Well, I mean, it's a U.S. corporation. Like at the end of the day, I think it's headquartered in Delaware. Like we can go, they have branches over.
I got a spicy question for you.
Monsanto was a U.S. corporation that got bought. It got bought by Bayer, which is a British company, because they had such bad press in the U.S.
To your point, Ian, I would be far more. I like the idea of antitrust laws and breaking a company up far more than I like the idea of seizing property.
Well, the problem with breaking up a company is what they did with Standard Oil, Rockefeller Standard Oil. They broke it up into 6 or 8 other oil companies, but Rockefeller still owned all those other companies. It just made them richer. So if you did that to BlackRock and now there's 8 companies that own 30% of the housing, what's the difference?
Well, here's the question, but Ian, hold on, I got a spicy question.
It's owned by itself. It's owned by its own investors, which it's crazy.
But then
Ian, I've got a very spicy question
owned by
for
one
you
person.
about this. So let's say that BlackRock only has a small percentage of real estate, and a huge reason the price was driven up was because there were foreigners who were given handouts from taxpayers to be able to purchase houses. Would you be okay with seizing those houses to bring prices down and give them to citizens?
Say that again, foreigners?
If it were the case that there were many people in our country who were non-citizens who were receiving specific benefits, or were migrants who were naturalized by activist judges or whatever, who received houses or benefits at the expense of taxpayers, and that drove the price of housing up, would you be okay with seizing their houses?
No, I'm talking about mega corporations.
So only mega corporations.
Just at this moment, BlackRock buying the housing in the United States.
I think 3 to 8% of homes are owned by corporations in this country.
I see absolutely no reason why a city can't, and I think they should, put a ordinance in. There's no. In my understanding, there's no constitutional barrier or reason why a city, county, or even state government couldn't say that, because a residential home is a particular designation that, residential homes could not be purchased by, you could say an out-of-state corporation. I mean, you could place some sort of there's no reason why you couldn't pass a law to say that. And when to ban BlackRock from doing that, or to ban them from doing it in the future so they can't gain more. Those are the types of things that are completely legal and constitutional that we could do.
Would you liquidate their assets, i.e. take their corporations and put them on a public market for sale?
They're already publicly owned.
Take the houses from BlackRock.
You could prevent them from buying any more, which would if you prevented them from buying any more, before, that would negate their entire business strategy, and they'd probably end up selling.
And
'Cause their strategy is to get
cheap supply.
to get a massive supply.
Right.
You brought up the idea of monopoly and breaking these companies up. Well, one of the things that David Zaslav said when the 2024 election was going on was that he wasn't talking about who he was going to vote for, but he did say that Trump was pro-business and pro-acquisition for companies. One of the reasons why David Ellison was able to make Skydance and Paramount a reality, and one of the reasons they're considered a front runner for buying Warner Brothers, is because that family has a strong relationship with Donald Trump, who is going to be pro-business and allowing them to merge their companies, even if there are actual monopolistic concerns there. So again, that's more him playing to his donor class than his base.
And like, would you become one with the Borg? Would you become one with the demon to preserve yourself in your way of life?
The Oracle demon, Larry Ellison.
I mean, Ian, and
Just
also
the mass conglomeration as like the demon,
when you talk about just BlackRock or just the big companies, I can't help but think of the fact that like when the income tax was instituted, it was only 1%. You were like, no, we're not going to worry about small businesses and stuff, and we wouldn't take the property from them. But when the income tax was created, it was 1 or 2% only on the top earners. Now everybody pays 40%.
Yep.
So it's not a situation where you can just say, oh, this will actually be limited.
You're saying
the government is, if you allow the government to seize property just because, you're going to see the government trying to seize more property.
Well, the Intel, buying into 10% of Intel, like the government just bought 10% of Intel. That's like pure communism right there.
That's not pure communism.
the
Pure
government's not
communism would
supposed
be
to
they
buy
take
private
all of
companies.
Intel and then all of the other companies.
Okay, it's a step towards pure communism. You're saying the slippery slope.
But the government has already done that, and the government has done that historically as well, taking an interest in a particular industry because of national security is different than saying we're going to expropriate all of your property because you own too much.
I think that BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard are a unique formation on the planet that needs to be dealt with. It's not just a corporation. You could call it something other than corporation. They're hiding behind that term in legal function right now. But how can 3 companies own 22% of the stock market? Who owns those companies? Who are those people? Their names aren't even public.
People
sometimes.
that own stock.
So the people who owns them. I mean, so if you actually look at where's they're like, they manage something like BlackRock's like 11 trillion now. It is pension funds globally. Like they have a massive, and pension funds are where all the biggest pools of capital on the planet are. Like Republican states have like a couple $1 trillion of investment fund. You have California, New York, and other blue states are another $2 or $3 trillion. European governments, their pension funds are another $5 or $6 trillion. So I mean, like where the biggest pools of capital are literally public pension funds. And the funny thing about it is because none of the individuals who have their pensions really have any idea where their money's invested. It's just in a pension. So it creates this thing where yes, it's all like invested in the stock market, but none of the individuals who own that money understand it, which is why you end up with the situation that you described with who owns BlackRock? The pensioners who have no idea what they own. It's a very weird situation. I do think, getting back to the point I made before, I think that there was a Houston judge earlier this year called BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, essentially monopolistic actors. Mm-hmm. And I think we're in a situation where it's pretty clear, I think we do need to be calling for something like that.
We have to, because otherwise we're going to see communism and socialism in an actual seizure of properties eventually.
Right.
Like if people are homeless on the street and some corporation owns 90% of the houses on a block, those people are just going to go break into the houses and squat and take them. So like we could do it, if we can do it legally and peacefully, I think that's important.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if your argument is use a little socialism to prevent a lot of socialism, I do think that the situation will eventually devolve into socialism either way.
Like
Don't you think there's some level of regulation that makes sense?
Pardon me?
Don't you think there's some level of regulation that makes sense?
Like you were saying, like we were saying, the idea of using existing antitrust laws, I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Breaking up a company.
Yeah.
That I think that's something that's
the
realistic.
multinational aspect that's new that makes antitrust laws almost malfunct.
I don't agree with you.
But domestically, they're effectively. I mean, there's like 3 actors that control a massive percentage of the market domestic. I think you can make an antitrust case for it. I'm not like an antitrust attorney, like that's not my specialty, but my point is there have been judges who've referred to them that way. I think that I think that we need to I think the American people need to start raising the alarm on that.
Which would require, and the thing is, I think what the point is, like you're talking about a fast solution that's a little bit of socialism, but the problem is the slow solution, like antitrust, takes forever, and these companies have unlimited money to bury it in lawsuits. They're the only ones that have the possibility of taking on the U.S. government
They've
and
lost
possibly
lawsuits
winning.
recently. I mean, so the ESG pension fund issue, like there have been lawsuits that have gone against corporations on that. So I'm not a black pillar on this. I think we can solve it. But we need to actually we need to collectively start saying this, consistently. We need to raise that alarm.
And there's a cultural issue around this here where, the young people who are upset about all these things, they go back and forth, especially on social media, with people from older generations who tell them to drink, make your coffee at home and you'll be able to buy a house one day, completely divorced from the reality of the world we live in now. Even if you're going the college route, what it costs to send somebody to college for debt that they're never going to be able to repay while they get their 50-year mortgage. Like I said before, there is so much blackpilling amongst the youth because they're every generation before them said we need to make the world better for our children, and the kids growing up now are being told by those that came before them, deal with it and pick yourself up by the bootstraps.
Yeah. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.